Hello, students! Welcome to this special video lesson designed by Rishi Sir. Today, we're diving into the very first chapter of your first flight textbook, a really beautiful story called A Letter to God. I think you're going to like this one. It's written by G.L. Fuentes. It seems so simple on the surface, but it really makes you think. So, here's our plan for today. We're going to start by exploring this farmer's incredible, unshakable faith. And then, the drama starts with the storm and this amazing letter that he writes. The reply he gets, though, that's probably the best part. Absolutely. After that, we have a quick little poetry corner. We'll look at two powerful poems by Robert Frost that are in this chapter, and we'll wrap it all up with the most important takeaways you'll need for your exams. Cello, let's begin. Okay, so right at the start, the textbook itself kicks things off with this really deep question you see on the slide. It asks, what should we put our faith in? That's a heavy one. It's so easy to say just have faith, but faith in what or in who? This is exactly what the story is all about. So let's keep this question in our minds as we meet our main character, Lensho.
Right, so let's set the scene. Just imagine a single house all alone on a low hill, and from there you can see a river and a whole field of ripe corn. This is where our story's hero, Lensho, lives. He's a simple farmer. He knows his fields inside and out. And right now, his entire year, all his hopes and dreams are pinned on just one thing, a good rain for his harvest.
Yeah, just imagine the pressure, no? Everything he's worked for all year depends on this one thing happening. He spends his whole morning just staring at the sky, waiting and hoping. You can really feel his anticipation building up. He's just so sure that the rain is going to come.
And you know what? His wish comes true. The rain finally starts, and you can just see his joy. And this right here is where we see a really key literary device. Lensho uses this beautiful metaphor. He says the raindrops aren't just water. He calls them new coins. He says the big drops are like 10-cent pieces, and the small ones are fives. For him, this rain is literally money falling from the sky.
But just when you think everything is going to be okay, that's when things take a very sudden and tragic turn. The gentle rain that promised him so much wealth, it quickly transforms into a violent, destructive hailstorm. All the hope he felt just a few moments before is completely washed away.
This part is so sad. The field just becomes white, like it's covered with salt. Not a single leaf is left on the trees, and the corn is totally destroyed. All their hard work, gone, just like that. Lensho's soul is just filled with sadness. They're facing a whole year of hunger. It's just complete hopelessness.
So, with absolutely everything lost, what does a person do? This is where Lensho's character becomes truly remarkable. In the hearts of everyone in that lonely little house, there was still a single hope: help from God. His faith is so absolute, so strong, he decides to do something completely extraordinary. He decides he's going to write a letter. See, his plan is so simple, and it's so pure. He just writes a letter directly to God. He explains his whole situation, and he asks for 100 pesos so he can plant his field again and his family can survive until the next harvest. And then he just goes to town and mails it, himself. There is absolutely no doubt in his mind. He just believes.
Okay, so what happens to this letter that's addressed simply to God? Well, a postman finds it, and at first, he and the postmaster have a really good laugh about it. You can understand why, right? But then the postmaster gets serious. He is so deeply moved by this man's faith that he decides he absolutely cannot let it be broken.
But 100 pesos is a lot of money. So the postmaster, who's a really kind man, he gives a part of his own salary, and he collects money from his employees and a few friends. But even with all that effort, he can only manage to collect a little more than half, exactly 70 pesos. He puts the money in an envelope for Lensho and signs it with just one word: God.
And now for the big climax. When Lensho gets the letter, he isn't surprised at all, not even a little bit. That's how strong his confidence is. But when he counts the money, he becomes angry. And the really crucial point here is why he's angry. His faith in God is so strong, he believes God could never ever make a mistake or deny his request.
So this whole situation introduces a very important literary device that you should definitely remember. It's called dramatic irony. Let's just break it down. It's when we, the readers, know the full story. We know the postmaster sent the money out of kindness, but the character in the story, Lensho, does not know this. This gap in knowledge is what creates the irony.
And this is the punchline. Lensho immediately writes another letter to God, and in it he says, You sent the money, but only 70 pesos reached me. Please send the rest. But whatever you do, don't send it by mail, because the post office employees are a bunch of crooks. How to manage this tension, no? He calls the very people who helped him crooks. It's funny, but it's also a little tragic, and that, everyone, is a perfect example of dramatic irony.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit and move to our poetry corner. After that really intense story, we have two very short and simple poems by the great Robert Frost. So let's do a quick vibe check and see what big ideas he's managed to pack into these small moments.
So the two poems have very, very different moods. Dust of Snow is about a really small, almost negative moment, a crow shaking some snow down from a hemlock tree, that completely changes the poet's bad mood and basically saves his entire day. It's all about hope. On the other hand, Fire and Ice is much more intense. It's about how the world could end. Frost says that desire is like fire and hatred is like ice, and both are powerful enough to cause total destruction. So yeah, two very different vibes, right?
Okay, so we've covered the story and the poems, and now it's time to get into the final and most important segment for your studies, the big takeaways. Seriously, these are the points you absolutely need to remember from this chapter.
Let's quickly run through the top 3 themes. First, and this one is obvious, is unquestioning faith, which we see so clearly in Lencho. Then there's the theme of humanity and kindness, which is shown by the postmaster and his colleagues. What a nice guy. And third, we have conflict. We actually see 2 types. There's man versus nature, with the hailstorm destroying the crops, and there's also man versus man, and that ironic misunderstanding between Lencho and the post office employees. And just to recap the literary devices, let's remember the 2 key examples from the story. First, there's the metaphor, where Lencho compares the raindrops to new coins, which shows us all his hope for a good, prosperous year. And second, of course, is the dramatic irony, where Lencho ends up blaming the post office employees, the very people who showed him such kindness. I still can't get over that part.
And we'll end with this final question, which really gets to the heart of the story. Lencho's faith was pure, it was absolute, but his lack of understanding of other people, of humanity, led him to a completely wrong conclusion. It's definitely something to think about. Chala, done and dusted. That's all for this chapter. Best of luck, guys.